Hey guys, it's Friday. I woke up thinking it was Thursday and I was a day off because we are on our gazillionth day of quarantine, and the days sometimes look a little bit the same. I'm kind of excited because I'm going to share with you, beginning today, one of my very, very favorite books from childhood. And interestingly, several years ago, I met a woman who has become my mentor, a woman that I look up to, and she lives in Boston. She was married to the son of my grandmother's best friend growing up in Brooklyn, New York. And I've talked about my grandmother before. She was born in 1911, and she lost her mother and her grandmother in the Spanish influenza epidemic of 1918. She eventually went to work in the Empire State Building, and she was a really strong, independent young woman. And then she met my grandfather, who became a stockbroker, and his first year was 1929. Now, that was the year that the stock market crashed. So they traveled through a lot of hard times together. My grandmother's best friend growing up in Brooklyn, New York, was a woman named Fran. And Fran had a son named Dick, and Dick married a woman named Lynn, and that's my friend who lives in Boston. Now, Lynn is an Episcopalian priest, and she is also a writer. And her mentor was a woman named Madeline L'Engle, who happens to be the author of one of my very favorite books from childhood. So I'm going to begin to read the book out loud. I've shared the PDF for you so that you can follow along. And if you don't like listening to me read, if you're auditory and want to hear me read, follow along. And if you're visual and want to read it on your own, go ahead and go to town, and then I'll just post the activities in our file, in our shared file. So I am going to pull up. Now, I want to read to you the foreword of A Wrinkle in Time. It's an appreciation by another one of my very favorite authors, and her name is Anna Quinlan. Here's what she has to say about A Wrinkle in Time, which I think both of us still have our copies on the bookshelf. The most memorable books from our childhoods are those that make us feel less alone, convince us that our own foibles and quirks are both as individual as a fingerprint and as universal as an open hand. That's why I still have the copy of A Wrinkle in Time that was given to me when I was 12 years old. It long ago lost its dust jacket. The fabric binding is loose and water-stained, and the soft and loopy signature on its inside cover bears little resemblance to the way I sign my name today. The girl who first owned it has grown up and changed, but the book she loved, though battered, is still magical. Its heroine is someone who feels very much alone indeed. Meg Murray has braces, glasses, and flyaway hair. She can't seem to get anything right in school, where everyone thinks she is strange and stupid. And she runs up against some real nastiness at a young age in the form of all those snide looks and comments about her father, a scientist who seems to have mysteriously vanished, or town gossip has it, run off with another woman. But Meg doesn't know real evil until she sets out on a journey to find her father, bring him home, along with her little brother, Charles Wallace, and a boy named Calvin. As they transcend time, space, and the limitations of their own minds, they get help from individuals of great goodness. Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Witch, Mrs. Who, the Happy Medium, and Aunt Beast. But the climax of their journey is a showdown with it, the cold and calculating disembodied intelligence that has cast a black shadow over the universe in its quest to make everyone behave and believe the same. If that sounds like science fiction, it's because that's one way to describe the story. Or perhaps you could call it the fiction of science. The action of the book, the search for Meg and Charles Wallace's missing father, relies on something called a tesseract, which is a way to travel through time and space using a fifth dimension. Although there's even a little illustration to make it easier to visualize, I still am not certain I do. Of course, Meg, who is so bright she can do square roots in her head, doesn't entirely understand it either. For just a moment I got it, she says. I can't possibly explain it now, but for a second I saw it. The truth is, I'm not a fan of science fiction, and my math and physics gene has always been weak. But there's plenty in the book for those of us predisposed toward the humanities as well. Mrs. Who remedies her language deficit by using the words of others to explain herself, quotes Dante, Euripides, and Cervantes, to name just a few. When Meg is trying to keep it from invading her brain, she realizes the multiplication tables are too rote to do the trick, and instead shouts out the opening of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It retorts that that's the point. Everybody's exactly alike. Meg replies triumphantly, no! Like and equal are not the same thing at all. Madeleine L'Engle published Wrinkle in 1962 after it was rejected by dozens of publishers. And her description of the tyranny of conformity clearly reflects that time. The identical houses outside which identical children bounce balls and jump rope in mindless unison evoke the fear so many Americans had of communist regimes that enshrine the interests of state-mandated order over the rights of the individual. Why do you think we have wars at home? Charles Wallace asks his sister, channeling the mind of it. Why do you think people get confused and unhappy? Because they all live their own separate individual lives. He tells Meg what she already knows from her own everyday battles. Differences create problems. But while L'Engle's story may have originally been inspired by the gray sameness of those communist countries, it still feels completely contemporary today, except maybe for Meg's desire for a typewriter to get around her dreadful penmanship. The Murray home is fractured by Mr. Murray's mysterious absence, and Meg's mother sleeping alone in the great double bed. Calvin may look like a golden boy, but his family barely notices he's alive. Even more timeless is the sense Meg has of place. It is the struggle all of us face, to be ourselves despite the overwhelming pressure to be like everyone else. Perhaps one of the most compelling and moving descriptions of that internal battle comes near the end of the book, when Mrs. Whatsit tells the children that life, with its rules, its obligations, and its freedoms, is like a sonnet. You're given the form, but you have to write the sonnet yourself. What you say is completely up to you. On its surface, this is a book about 3 children who fight an evil force threatening their planet. But it is really about a more primal battle all human beings face: to respect, defend, and love themselves. When Meg pulls the ultimate weapon from her emotional arsenal to fight for her little brother and for good, it is a great moment, not just for herself, but for every reader who has ever felt overlooked, confused, alone. It has been more than 4 decades since I first read A Wrinkle in Time. If I could Tesser, perhaps in some different time and place, I would find a Meg Murray just my age, a grown woman with an astonishing brain, a good heart, and a unique perspective on how differences are what makes life worth living. Oh, how I would like to meet her. So to Tesser, my friends, to Tesser is to be able to jump and time travel. And I would like for you to think about, if you could Tesser anywhere and meet any one person, where would it be? Where would you Tesser to? Who would you meet? And what would you like to experience with that person? That's what I would like for you to respond to today. You can do it in your learner journal, and you can take a picture and send me a picture of your Tessering adventure, or you can open up a doc on a Google Doc and share it with me. So I would like for you to write a paragraph, and that's between 8 and 10 sentences, complete sentences. Use your best grammar. And I would like for you to tell me about your Tessering experience. Time travel. You can go forward, you can go backward. and you're going to meet someone that you'd like to meet, and you're going to have an adventure that you get to create. Have fun, guys, and I'll see you next time.